Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another team news on Friday. I had a game week 26. Bit of a weird one this week. Plenty of fixtures as normal, all 10 games going ahead, of course, but they're spread out over 2 weeks. So there's a little bit less team news than maybe normal, but we're still going to get through it. How you doing, Neale?
All right, Andy. Yeah, as you say, it's a bit of an odd one because we've only heard from 8 managers ahead of the deadline, and the rest it'll be too late. It'll be given their press conferences next week. So, yeah, we'll rattle through the 8 that we have heard from, and then basically just round up anything that you know of at present for the other dozen clubs. But yeah, it'll be. I'm expecting at least 1 or 2 major injuries to drop next week that we don't know about already, because this is always the case. And of course, it'll be too late. We'll be powerless to do anything about it then. So then get your benches ready, I think, for a very odd game week.
Yeah, I must admit, ever since I hit the wildcard button, there's been a few reasons why I probably shouldn't have done it. This is one of them because, players like Traore, I'm thinking about getting in, but just don't know if he's going to be back fit. Maybe he will, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, because there's only 8 teams, we're just going to go through one by one the teams listed that are playing this weekend. And then Neale will just rattle off any other kind of injury news that we already know about, like he said. So we'll start with Everton up first.
Yeah, pretty quiet really on that front. Delph is suspended. So Ancelotti confirmed that 2 of his remaining 3 central midfielders will start. So that's Sigurdsson, Schneiderlin and Davies. Nothing really that will trouble fantasy managers. I think Sigurdsson will get a start because he's been a regular either side of his groin injury. And as for the rest, pretty much as you were, Gomez and Gabamin are the longer term injuries. Gomez is going to be given a friendly during the winter break to get him up to speed. He could be back in game week 27. But apart from that, pretty much as you were with Everton.
And I saw their opponents, Crystal Palace. Bit of news there for managers that were maybe clinging on to hope that Kelly would get his place back. He looks to be injured now.
Myself included, yeah. I've still got Kelly, but I think he's for the chopping block this week because he's not only lost his place to Joel Ward at right back, he's picked up a calf injury as well, which rules him out of game week 26. So any lingering hope that you might have had that he would start this week is dissipated because he's on the sidelines joining Sacco and Schlupp, who are long-term injuries. Tosin's had a hamstring problem, but he's ineligible to play anyway because it's against his parent club. So yeah, Kelly sidelined. And other than that, Hodgson, I think, gave a pretty clear bill of health, other than the names I've already mentioned there.
Cool. And how about Brighton? I know I have the wild carded him out now, but there's still a few more pay owners knocking about. Obviously, a bit frustrated after last week with Murray coming in. What do you think the lineup's going to be looking like this week?
Yeah, he's obviously the likes of Guardiola and Howe get the most attention from us who, they're the ones that are the toughest to second guess because they give us so little away in the press conferences. Potter's slightly different in that he's fairly open about injuries, but he's very, very hard to second guess on a weekly basis because he's constantly changing things around, whether it be the system or the personnel within that. An example being we've just given there, Maupay last week had been a regular starter this season, dipped in and out when there was periods of fixture congestion, so like around Christmas and early December he was given a rest. But there wasn't really any indication that Murray was going to start. Murray hadn't started since September, I think, in the league. There was quotes from Potter last week about Murray, but there is every week about Murray because he's constantly being asked about his future, whether he would move away in the January transfer window. As it happens, he signed a 1-year contract and he started in game week 25, scored. And yeah, Potter said this morning, or was it last night, that he gave his press conference, he said that he's done himself no harm of starting again this week, Murray. Mentioned that the fact that he's fresh as well because he's barely played it all this season. He's been an impact sub at best, playing in the odd cup game as well. But yeah, said his all-round performance was good. He contributed even before his goal. So yeah, no guarantees in the slightest that Maupay will get his place back. You're never ever sure with Potter. In terms of injuries for Brighton, they've got Byrne on the cusp of a return. He was quite key to their lineup really before he got injured. He was a sort of the third centre back playing as a left back at the same time, helped them transition between the 2 formations. He's been out for about 6 to 8 weeks with a clavicle injury, but he's making good progress. Duffy's back in training as well, another centre half. So I think that just leaves Izquierdo as the definite absentee for Brighton, which makes it even harder to guess because when they've got a full squad, then you're never entirely sure who's going to play on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, I think if anyone's still clinging on to more players, probably almost getting to the point it's last chance saloon. He's just been so frustrating to own. Obviously, if you can't guarantee he's going to play every week, that just makes it even worse. How about their opponents then, Watford? Any news on Sarr this week?
Yeah, not clear cut, which is not what you want really. If you're heading into a deadline where you're unsure about 12 clubs right off the bat, what you don't want is a 50% flag on one of your players who's playing this weekend. So he's been in training. I think Pearson said yesterday, this was held Thursday evening, that he was going to be assessed today before final decision is going to be made. But he's had this muscle problem, and Pearson highlighted the fact that sprinters, he used the word sprinters, such as Sarr, who've had these soft tissue injuries, they could, they run the risk of a reoccurrence. So I don't know if he was perhaps signaling the fact that he would, give him the winter break, the 2-week extra period to recover. But he's certainly a doubt for this week. Kiko Firmino is again on the cusp of a return, but it's possibly more likely that he'll come back in game week 27. But those are the two near in a return. Janmaat's still out. He'll be back on the grass next week. Cleverly is in contention. He's been past fit by Pearson. Whether he'll get in the team or not, we don't know, because there was two players who we didn't get an update on in the broadcast section, and that was Chalobah, who came off last week with a back spasm, and Craig Dawson, who was ruled out of game week 25 with an unspecified issue. Kabasele came in. So we're not sure if those two players are fit or not. But Sarr will be the main one from a fantasy perspective. And unfortunately, we haven't got anything clear cut on him.
Yeah, I guess if you've got a decent bench, maybe keep him one more week, but it must be pretty frustrating if you still own him at this point. All right, we'll move on to something maybe a little bit more interesting. You're going to tell us 100% guaranteed, is Lundstram going to start this week, or is he just done completely from now on?
I wish I could be that confident about it. Now there are some quotes from Wilder's press conference that we won't unfortunately hear about until after the deadline. So this is the embargoed section, which won't come out till tomorrow night at 10:30, which is no use to us. But we didn't get much in the broadcast section of it at all, really. Mentioned the fact that kind of didn't name check Berger by name, but mentioned the fact that these three loanees were up to speed and they're fully fit and ready to go. But we knew that already because he started in game week 25. So McGoldrick's their only injury concern. He's had this foot problem for weeks now. He's been back on the grass this week, so he could return to contention. Wilder said otherwise. They've come through the Crystal Palace game fully fit. So we're going off. Yeah, those who are clinging on to Lundstram, which I include myself in that, are going off some comments he made after the Palace game, where he hailed the contribution of Lundstram and Mousset, who came off the bench in that game, and had, by all accounts, I mean, I saw large chunks of this game, but I was watching others at the same time. By all accounts from Sheffield United fans, had his best performance in a long time. So I think the problem with Lundstram had been that he'd just been run into the ground. He hadn't been used to playing this many minutes in a single season. He started the season brilliantly, just looked jaded as much as anything else, and had been substituted a couple of times. Then lost his place to Bezic, and then that place subsequently went to Berger. So unfortunately, we can't give you anything concrete. And given Wilder's previous for not making unnecessary changes, I mean, the other 8 midfielders and defenders have basically played whenever they've been available, then I wouldn't hold my hopes up. I've seen people talking about, there'll be rotation now in central midfield. Well, that really hasn't been Wilder's style this season. Norwood and Fleck, even in the Championship, were playing pretty much every game. So, I am not in the slightest bit confident that he'll get his place back. He'll get minutes. There's no doubt in that. He'll get some sort of game time. The one thing in his favour, I suppose, is that this is a home game against Bournemouth, who are obviously relegation threatened. Besic and Berger played in the 2 away matches at Manchester City and Palace. So if he thinks that Lundstram offers perhaps more of an attacking threat from that right side of central midfield position, that might count in his stead. But there's just so many doubts about it at the moment that if you have got the luxury of making a sideways move or moving Lundstram on for somebody else, then this could be the time, because this uncertainty, I suspect, is going to drag on beyond game week 26. And then, of course, they've got Brighton game week 28 as well, and possibly 31. So Yeah, I can't give you anything positive, I'm afraid, because there's millions of us out there who still hang on to Lundstrom. But yeah, I think in the dark, unfortunately, Andy, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with the team sheets, sadly.
It does feel like one of those players that's going to be a constant. Well, it could be this week. I'll just
Yeah,
hold him one more week.
yeah,
I've wildcarded, so like it's an easy way to get rid of him. But if he starts, it's going to be super frustrating for those of us that wildcard. I think because if he does start, he'll haul. I think the problem is if you've got a good bench, it's great, but he's probably going to come on like he did in the last game. So
yeah,
that's
it.
I think like if you want to keep him one more week, I guess go ahead. But if he doesn't start this week, I don't really see what the hope is after that.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see. And how about Bournemouth? Anything from Howe this week?
Yeah, they've got King and Stacey on the cusp of return. They've been back in training for a little while, and they missed out last weekend. Stanislas came back in that match, but they are back. Certainly in contention. If they're not going to make the matchday squad, then they'll definitely be back by Gameweek 27. Jefferson Lerma suspended, and just the longer term ones really that's left outstanding. So Mepham, Danjuma, and Daniels. Brooks is back on the grass finally. He's taken to doing some running now, but Howe was saying that he's still quite some time away because he's been out for so long. It'll take a while for him to get back to match fitness. So I suspect we won't see him for a little while yet.
I kind of like sometimes you just forget that players still play. Like David Brooks, like it seems to have been so long since we last heard that name. All right, so back to more interesting teams. I need a full team prediction here. Again, on wildcard, I'm thinking of Aguero captain potentially. A lot of people saying Champions League coming up. That is 17 days away.
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced that plays a huge part, especially considering the last game was like 6 or 7 days away as well.
Yeah.
So Man City, any injury news? Who's going to benefit from Sterling and is Aguero going to start, do you reckon?
Well, that's the main injury news, as you said there. Sterling's out with a hamstring problem. Guardiola, as is his form, doesn't know when he's going to return. He never does. He said it could be weeks, which again might just be the winter break, and then he's could be back for Leicester and then Madrid. But Sterling is out. Sane is back in training, but not quite ready for a return. Zinchenko, of course, is banned. Now, Guardiola said Stones and Mendy were fine. Asked why they hadn't been playing recently, said there wasn't any injury. Laporte, we didn't get anything from Guardiola. Again, this was in the broadcast section. I'm hoping we'll get some quotes released from the embargo tonight, although I suspect it might be again tomorrow night because Man City's in action on Sunday. So, yeah, we've got possibly Mendy coming back in. Laporte, we didn't get anything on this time, but after the Spurs game, Guardiola said he was much, much better. He basically missed out in Gameweek 25 because of fatigue and then the cup games around it as well. He'd just come back from a long-term injury against, I think it was Sheffield United, wasn't it, in Gameweek 24. So obviously handling his recovery gently. This could be the game for him to come back. I think Guardiola was fairly confident that he was going to be recovering in time for this West Ham game. The fact that it is a match where they'll be on the front foot, you won't have to do much defending, you wouldn't think, in terms of running about. So he could be back for this. Who knows? As for, the $1 million questions further forward, I suppose Sterling not being there is one fewer option to worry about in terms of rotation, and Sane not being ready to recover either. So you've got the likes of Bernardo Silva and Gabriel Jesus, who've both deputised on the left flank when Sterling hasn't played this season, as has Phil Foden actually in one game. So either of those two players who haven't featured for a little while from the start could come in on the left flank. Now, of course, Jesus is also an alternative to Aguero through the middle. Both Bernardo and Jesus have played for either the club or the country on the right wing as well, which is where Mahrez is currently occupying. So even with Sterling being injured, there's still that degree of uncertainty. At the moment, I'll tell you what I'm going with at the moment. At the moment, I've gone with Mahrez, Aguero and Bernardo up front. I'm 50-50 between Bernardo and Jesus on the left, but there's a chance that both of them can play. So I think the fact that I was mentioning this yesterday, I think in one of the articles on the site, saying that if Jesus doesn't play this week or doesn't start, he'll have gone a full month without a start by the time Man City play again in game 27. So, yeah, would Guardiola let someone not play competitive football for that long, heading into a busy period where there's Champions League games to play as well? I guess the fact that the Champions League for Man City isn't until after game week 27 27 or 28. It might even be.
Yeah, I
think
think
they're
it's
the
27
second.
after the Leicester
Yeah.
game.
So yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because this is the winter break. So yeah, they've got a few games before what I suspect will be Guardiola's priority now with winning the Champions League. So yeah, despite the injury, still some shred of uncertainty over who'll start. I think with Man City assets, you don't sell them before this game. It's such a great fixture. I wrote the Captain Sensible article this morning, and I mentioned that it's sort of a not a low risk, a medium risk, high reward strategy because you're never quite sure who's going to start. But if they do, then they could fill their boots this weekend. It could be an absolute bloodbath against West Ham. So yeah, I know it sounds like a terribly sit on the fence type
I know.
job.
We wanted
No one
guarantees.
really, no one really knows what he's. I don't know of any in the No Man City team news writer out there. I wish I did. It would make my job a lot easier. If someone can pipe me into the direction of like an Anfield Express for Man City, that would be much obliged. But yeah, I've just got to hide all the permutations, which I've done in the blurb section of the team news entry for Man City. There's just so many different options. He could even go with a wing-back system. He could play with, Jesus and Aguero up top. He could play with De Bruyne behind Aguero. There's just so many options available to him and so many permutations he's done this season that we never really know. So you just got to keep your fingers crossed and hope that your chosen Man City asset plays. I think all of them got minutes. Anyway.
Yeah, I could be wrong. It wasn't the last time that Sterling missed out or was kind of benched. Was that not the Villa game when Jesus and Aguero played and they smashed them like 6-1 or whatever it was?
Jesus played on the left flank, so Aguero was through the middle. Jesus was, he was stationed on the left, and I think Mahrez was on the right. Of course, Bernardo's played on the left once before this season in Gameweek, which was it, 8 against Watford, and scored a hat-trick. So, 6 it was, Gameweek 6. So he's got previous of scoring from the left as well. So, there's ways of Guardiola playing both Jesus and Aguero in the same team, which I think must be a crumb of comfort if you own Aguero.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get him on wildcard or not. I still haven't decided, and there's less than 24 hours to go. I will make that decision at some point. I think he's going to start Aguero. All this Champions League stuff, I get that will probably be more of a priority as they go forward. But if he doesn't play this, if he's not going to play this one, surely he's going to play Leicester. He's not going to not play in both the next 2 league games just because of the Champions League. That would be 24 days without a game then, I think I worked it out as. So I got a feeling he could just play all of them. It's quite a lot of a break. You play West Ham, you have a long break till Leicester, then it's another, I think, 5 days till the Champions League. I think there's a chance that he plays all of them. Obviously, can't guarantee it, like you said, but I don't think the Champions League right now, for this week at least, is a worry, to be honest.
No.
But anyway, that's just my thoughts. And lastly, their opponents that we're hoping are going to get smashed 8-0, West Ham. Any news there?
Felipe Anderson's back on the grass. He's been training the past couple of days. Yarmolenko's building up match fitness as well. I'll be honest, I haven't actually seen Moyes' press conference yet because it hasn't actually arrived in our file drop thing. So all I've seen so far, the quotes from West Ham themselves. So I'll look into that more detailed later on when I actually see it. But I don't suppose many people are going to be interested in West Ham. It's more the fact that what kind of opposition are they going to put out against our Man City assets. So I would probably expect them to go to a back 3 or back 5 it'll be. Moyes has generally done this in the tougher games. He's gone with Cresswell as a third centre half, and then played wing backs either side of the back 3. So I would expect them to be operation get behind Sebastian Haller this weekend. I think just to basically stem the tide and try and do a damage limitation, because I can't see anything other than being a comfortable Man City win.
This is it's going to be because of the way the games are spread out over 2 weeks. I think those that go Aguero captain can just imagine like a 1-0 West Ham win, and you've got to wait another week until you see all the results. It'll just be that kind of a bit like game in 24 when Mane went off injured. But you'll have to wait and see. I guess it's worth mentioning as well, for any all the up-to-date team news, make sure to check the site. There's a team news section at the top, fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. That'll be kept updated if there's any more news from now, and obviously on Twitter as well, FF Scout. But before we go, do you want to is there any other kind of news or injuries and stuff you just want to rattle through that we know about?
So I'll just go through an A to Z of players that are already flagged and anything we've heard of recently. So Arsenal, we're still waiting to see if Cedric and Kolasinac will be be fit for the match against Newcastle. Again, we won't hear anything more before the deadline. This is going to be the case with all 12 of the teams I mentioned now. They were both penciled in for a return after the winter break. Villa, there was not so much happening there. Again, of what we know, Conser and Drinkwater were flagged at 75. Haven't heard anything since. Burnley, Barnes, I wouldn't expect back because he's had hernia surgery. I think it's perhaps a longer road back for him. Goodmanson had been on the periphery of a return, but he's been again handled very carefully because of this hamstring problem ahead of their game with Southampton. Now Chelsea could have Pulisic back. So I mentioned this yesterday in sort of a guide of the winter break on the site. Pulisic was penciled in for a return after the winter break. He had even been in the run, I think, for Gameweek 25, but they had to sort of dial him back a bit because I think he wasn't quite ready. But I saw some comments from Lampard earlier in the week where he said, hopefully this 2-week break, this winter break, will come in a good time for him. So there's a possibility that he is back in the contention for the Man United game, given that it is on the Monday night, which is 9 days after the deadline. So he could be back for then. Loftus-Cheek has made a playing return as well. He's played for the reserves in a friendly behind closed doors. So I think he got an hour in, so I'd expect him to be building up fitness over the next couple of weeks as well. They could be watching the season run in. Leicester and Didi pulled out of the side last weekend, game week 25. Now, Roger said it wasn't serious, it was more precautionary. So hopefully he'll be back. And hopefully there isn't any repercussions from Vardy's glute injury because, again, we won't hear anything until next week. Liverpool, I suppose, is a big one. So Mane, now at 75 in FPL. Now, that's just purely based on what Klopp had said previously. So he'd ruled him out of the West Ham game, which was the second double game week 24 fixture, and then said he probably wouldn't feature against Southampton, which was the case. He missed out then. But after that, he said he should be fit and that the week rest would come at a good time for him. So we're going off quotes that are now like over a week old based on what his flag is. And the fact that he has been pictured back in Melwood doing rehab work, same with Milner. He was doing his recovery work in Spain before that. So he's going to be close, I would suspect, unless there's any kind of setback. Now, the Champions League is something that Liverpool have to factor in because they're playing, is it Atletico? 3 days after they play Norwich. So while I don't think there'll be rotation, I do think there could be minute management in that game. If they're cruising against Norwich, knowing that they've got a Champions League tie coming up 3 days after that, and there could be some early substitutions in that game. Man United, Pogba and McTominay, I believe, didn't go with United on the winter break jolly, so I wonder if they're not quite ready for a return in game week 26 either. Again, that's the Monday night game against Chelsea, but that's a week on Monday. So they have got a bit of recovery time there. Newcastle were expecting a trio of forwards back, so Carroll, Gale and Muto. Joe Linton came off with a hip problem in the FA Cup replay, so that's the full house with the centre forwards. They're all flagged at the moment. Apart from that, I think we're not really expecting too many others back. The likes of Dummett, Williams out for the season or long enough anyway. Shelby's out for a few weeks as well. Norwich, I think we're pretty quiet on that front of what we know so far. Again, this could all change next week. So I think Closer is a long-term absentee. Southampton, now they played against Spurs in midweek. FA Cup replay. Gineppo missed out with illness that night. Ward-Prowse came off with, in fact, he was stretchered off with a really nasty-looking injury, but it's since transpired that it was just a deep cut on his knee. So Hasenhüttl was even suggesting he might be ready to come back against Burnley. So he could be in the side either in his usual central midfield spot or at right back, where he deputised against, I think, Liverpool. They have got Walker-Peters now, who Hasenhüttl said would not play against Liverpool. That was the case, but he would be given this winter break to learn how Southampton play and the demands required of a player in his side. So he could make his debut at fullback potentially. Spurs in that same match were without Lamela and Lo Celso. They had groin and thigh problems and missed out. I think they're just minor. In fact, Mourinho was saying that Lo Celso wanted to play, so he can't have been far away from return. Bergwijn was ineligible to play in that match, so he's obviously back in contention for the Villa match. And they've got, for anyone thinking about Tanganga, Ben Davies has been back in training as well. Now, Davies was someone who Mourinho's mentioned quite a few times in his press conferences about being integral to the way Spurs play, being that left back who can drop in as a left-sided centre half when they transition. But the young 4 million or 4.1 he is now, he's done really well ever since. So there's no guarantees that Davies will walk straight back to the side. It's just something to be aware about, I think, if you're expecting regular starts. And I think I just leave Wolves, who, as you mentioned earlier, Adama Traore, I think, is the guy who's yellow flagged. I think Vinagre is not quite as seriously injured as they thought, so he might be nearing a return by the time the Leicester game turns around. But Traore, yeah, he was flagged with essentially a calf problem. Well, he had dislocated his shoulder as well, but it was the calf problem that caused him to get the flag on an FPL because he'd played on with a dislocated shoulder. He got popped back into place, which happened once before this season as well. But he had ice on his calf after the match. Santo, I don't think there's anything to be worried about. Santo said he's a tough lad. He should be okay, hopefully. And he's since gone on a tour with Wolves to Marbella for their little warm weather training thing. So I think there's a lot of positive noises coming out of the Wolves camp regarding Traore. But yeah, unfortunately, I wish it could be more help with those other 12 teams. But just be prepared for a shock announcement or two to happen next week when it's far too late to do anything about it. So as I said earlier, just get your bench order sorted and make sure you've got at least one or two playing subs ready to come on, just in case.
Yeah, I'm definitely preparing for heartache. I'm quite quietly confident about Traore. I think I'm going to have him on my wildcard squad. I think he'll be fine. Tanganga's an interesting one. I'm just not confident enough yet. I think there's so many. It feels like there's so many other players at that price point anyway, like Taylor, Lascelles, whoever it might be, even like Southampton players are only 4.4. That I don't know if it's worth going for it, but it'd be cool if he does keep his place long term, even if he just moves to maybe play as centre back. I think was it Tongan that came off midweek? He wasn't playing too well.
It was, yeah.
So you never know, but the problem is we don't know right now. We're not going to know until probably game week 27 onwards, but we'll see. But yeah, if there's any other kind of team news or up-to-date stuff you want to check out, make sure to do it on the site, or go to the site, I should say. Neale will have all that covered as always. Otherwise, I think we will leave it there. I think we've covered for everything. Thanks very much, Neale.
No bother, Andy. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, good luck, everyone. We'll see you not this time next week, sometime before game week 27. See you later all.